Every year in Cameroon, tons of agricultural produce end up as huge heaps of garbage, grown with deep love and devotion. These fruits, vegetables, and other crops litter our streets, while the farmers continue to struggle. Many have said that agricultural transformation is the best solution to this problem. And we say Phoenix Agric Entrepreneurship Community Program, AGREC, is the best place to start. AGREC is the most innovative and only tuition-free program in the Republic of Cameroon that takes business students and makes them food and beverage entrepreneurs. Held each year under the auspices of the Minister of Higher Education with institutional support from the Ministries of Agriculture and Rural Development and small and medium-sized enterprises, social economy and handicrafts, AGREC has become the reference in agricultural entrepreneurship in Cameroon. Are you a holder of the advanced level certificate? Are you passionate about project management or marketing, trade sales or accountancy or logistics and transport management or international trade? Do you aspire to become a big name in the food and beverage sector? Then register for AGREC today. Call 675-102650 or visit www.funic.co. The future is bright. The future is Funic. Your future is AGREC.
Forging a successful career path begins from your foundation, a foundation of quality and professional education. It is a weapon of transformation and a passport to the future. It marks credibility and years of training thousands of professionals in HND, BTech, BSc, and MBA in the schools of Business and Management Sciences, Engineering and Education, with remarkable mentorship from the University of Bamenda for the BTech and MBE and the University of Boya for the BSc program is second to none. From committed professors and lecturers in classrooms to numerous academic field trips, internships and workshops, HIPMAP will reform and guide you towards your success. Admissions are now open in our Boya and Douala campuses. Join us. Together, we will build a legacy.
HIPMAP is what it is today because of its excellent and competent teachers.
Your children HIPMAP will be the perfect place to gain that professionalism that you need to further your educational career.
The Higher Institute of Business Management and Technology, the University Institute for Professionals.
Hello televiewers, good evening and welcome to Prime. Today we are going to be looking at the situation of PTA fees, levies in our government institutions with focus on private institutions, asking and answering the question as to whether private schools should collect PTA levies and what for. We equally are going to be looking at the situation of back to school in the southwest and northwest region, with informations indicating that we are recording highest enrollment since the commencement of the ongoing sociopolitical crisis rocking the southwest and northwest region. We are going to be discussing this with the panelists, two of whom are already here with us. Tamai Travis is in the house with us. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Leonard. Good evening, Cameroon. Good evening to the President of the Republic.
We also are in the company of Tamfu Jones. He is the Secretary General of Modegna Party. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Joe. Good evening, Jarvis. Good evening, televiewers. It's a pleasure always to come here and see into how we chip in to nation growth.
Okay, we are expecting the arrival into our studios of Fa Elvis Tayon, who just indicated that he is on his way coming. We are also going to be listening to someone who is running an association encouraging people to overcome this whole issue of cancer. She is encouraging especially women to know that they can still live and have so much joy living with cancer. We are going to be receiving her in the course of the program. We start with you, Tamara Travis. PTA, you have been paying PTA. It is true that your parents paid it. Today you are growing up into a man. Have you actually understood what this is all about?
To answer your question, I think understanding PTA then and now is that these are two different ball game. Because when we were going to school, that was the early 90s, you could actually see that PTA was being used to do kind of a lot as far as school development was concerned, because at that time we had domestic science, real science, and we had farm practice, and we had some other activities, youth day activities that were high gear. And at the point in time, education was not free in Cameroon, because we just have free education. That was the late 2000s when the government decided to liberalize the primary school sector, to say that okay, schools can now run for 2.5 or at least 1.5 for just paying registration fee, which is still not the case in practice if you go by practice. But if you look at how PTA was being managed from the late 90s to the early 2000s, it had substance. Development classrooms were being built and things were being done. At that time, we had few private schools, especially in Boya and in Mehmet Division. We had very few private schools that were all going up. And these few private schools were not actually collecting PTA per se, which is Parents Teachers Association. And the PTA at the time was firm, because you could see when they said there's a PTA meeting, parents took it seriously. And that's the moment where you see deliberations that is being done to understand the state of affairs of the school and how students, our pupils, are going to benefit from the school. And parents now come with complaints from their various pupils and what they think the grievances they have as far as their kids may have channeled it to them. At that time, PTA was strong. Remember that at the time we still had corporate punishment was still very enforced in schools, where teachers had the all-powerful effect to exhibit corporate punishment. But when we come to the late 2000s, looking at now that I'm already a man and paying PTA, I feel like it's obsolete, because you don't see the use of the money. First of all, you don't see the importance of PTA now in the importance of attending the meeting. Now it's more of a come together than an affair of the state, especially in private schools, where you expect that if you are taking PTA, it does mean that the fee should be reduced. And you should know that, Leonard, that schools are non-profit institutions. They are not paying taxes, and if they are to pay taxes, it depends on the kind of taxes they pay. They don't pay tax as compared to a business enterprise, which are profit-making institutions. The government considers schools to be institutions that develop capacities that help in bringing up young people, providing services that the state cannot be able to provide at the same time. The state acknowledges that they cannot provide education to all Cameroonians. That's why the state decided to liberalize the sector, to say that okay, individuals can come up and provide some of these services at the behest of the state, while maintaining the what we call the standard of the education. But in context that you see now, PTA to me is more of a profit-making venture in private institution. For example, a private institution in Douala, where we are, you move around the list of a primary school should be about 150,000, and 150,000 is just the least. At the point in time, you are still expected to pay PTA. You ask yourself, where is this PTA going? And you see that these schools are owned by individuals, not by board. I could understand that you aren't paying PTA where is in a school that is owned by a group of people, where individuals don't invest, a particular person don't control the school. But you will see that a particular individual will come up with the school and collect PTA money, and within 5 years the school closes down, and the infrastructure is changed to something else. You start seeing a business venture moving on there. To me, Leonard, to be very, very short on this, I think PTA now is not necessary. Even the government schools here, because if you look at the government schools, the state has assumed full responsibility, and instead we were made to understand that the reason why PTA was being paid was simply because the government was not doing enough to ascertain or to sustain the school. But now we are coming at a level of where the government has assumed its responsibility, taking development in their hands.
When you say government has taken, we are going to come to government. Your appreciation of the whole concept of PTA levies.
I think, before now, it was reasonable. But now I don't get it anymore because everything has changed. You go to, because when they talk about PTA, I don't think so much about private schools because of my experience in the private schools. I've not really seen and felt the payment of PTA levies to be so compulsory, given because I spend most of my time in Douala. Given that here in Douala, many schools are being rented, their infrastructures are being rented. So they don't own infrastructure as per se, so paying PTA to those schools, because most of the for what I know about PTA, in our own time, we had teachers in school who were PTA teachers who were being paid by the monies collected for that PTA. So we had buildings in the school compound that were being built by the PTA funds. But today, most of these schools are already well organized with enough infrastructures and stuff, and the government is doing its best, because we cannot always criticize the government. They are doing their best, even though they are not able to cover the whole country, but at least they have done much so far. Now, talking about but today, since the infrastructure are already there, people are still collecting PTA. That's why we have heard about, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a very scandalous information circulating here in Douala, whereby a principal at registration and PTA funds. Because you see, a government school in Douala, a government secondary school in Douala, has in its coffers about hundreds of millions of PTA money that he or she is managing, and he is accountable to nobody. Because by the time the money disappears, no parent will come to stand. Where will you stand? To whom will you report him?
We are going to come to the government schools, but increasingly private schools are collecting PTA fees. Should they actually collect? How do we understand that private schools increasingly are trying to institute PTA fees?
Jonah, let me start by explaining some few issues where what PTA funds were being used for before coming out to see if that pertain to the private schools. We had teachers that were being paid from the government schools from PTA levy. We had things that were being brought from the government schools from PTA levy. But when we look at the situation now, how does private school runs? They run strictly on funding from school fees from parents and sometimes from non-government organizations. There's a kind of corruption which is ongoing. I will not like to equate corruption. I like to equate it embezzlement, which is ongoing within the private sector, school sector, that many don't see. Most of these private schools have applied for fundings abroad, that they are doing what is known as community school, that they are teaching individuals for free, and they are collecting money. And many people don't seem to understand that that is a new scheme that's ongoing. A lot of these private schools have actually applied for fundings abroad. Now, when this money comes, they still collect PTA and add to what they have. A private school by default is not supposed to collect PTA. The first reason is because they don't have any PTA teacher that they'll claim they are recruiting to pay, because it's not it's not the parents that recruit teachers. Is this the responsibility of the institution to recruit its teachers? That's why you see their fees are quite high, and because of their fees are quite high, they take into consideration the amount that is being paid to teachers, the amount that is being paid per the building, the amount that is supposed to pay for maintenance of infrastructures. Remember that schools are non-profit institutions. If a school is a profit institution, it does need to pay a high tax as compared to any other government or any other business sector like MTN, Orange, even my media and the rest, because these are non-private institutions, non-profit institutions. Those they are not supposed to collect PTA. It's sad that you still see PTA levy. Sometimes it's not even 2.5. You see PTA levy 10,000 for private school, and I ask myself, this 10,000, multiplying that 10,000 by the total number of students or pupils that in that school. Let's say you have a school of approximately 300 students or pupils. You multiply 10,000 by 300. per PTA, not in the actual tuition fee. And you have not added what we call, they have embedded some other fees into feeding, health allowance. Those fees have been embedded. Those are other avenues where they still return money. And institutions that want to make profit, I will always say that if these private schools want to make profit by adding PTA, because they are not supposed to, they should declare themselves profit-making institutions. And there's another thing, Leonard. Most of these schools that many people don't know have applied for fundings abroad. I keep saying this because I am within the sector. I see it every day. Fundings abroad. There are a lot of funding agencies. UNESCO have sub-funding agencies that give money to private institutions, to community institution schools to develop capacity, because they believe that they are non-profit. They don't have money. But when you see some of these CEO or stakeholders apply, when they have these fundings, they can now, you can see some pilot project, they are carrying out project and snapping students and sending, and the end of the day, they still go around collecting PTA. My view is that PTA should not be paid in private institutions. If private institution wants that PTA be paid, they should declare themselves government institution. They should, in fact, I don't know how to put this phrase very well, but they should change from private to government institution, because if the government school is collecting PTA, is at least is kind of understanding that the state may not have provided enough teachers to cover up for those courses. Remember that in the late 90s, we didn't have enough teachers, government teachers in schools. I went to school in government secondary school, Bombe Bakundu, before I came back to Lycée Bilal for my high school. And in Bombe Bakundu at the time in 1998, when the school was created, we didn't have a lot of government teachers. We had just 2 government teachers, with the principal, and the rest of the teachers were PTA. Then our parents were paying PTA. We understood that it is for the growth of the community, because you cannot allow that on the government to bring in teachers at the point in time the community need to develop. We saw the need for PTA, but in this time, Leona, in Douala, where is the role of PTA at private schools? Yeah. Who are they recruiting? Whose infrastructure are they building?
Yeah, that is the question I'm asking you, Tamfu Jones. If private schools are collecting PTA levies today, what would be the use for that money?
It's a public theft. I will call it like that. They are stealing. They're not even investing. They are trying to steal, extract money from suffering parents. Because when you look critically, you realize that the current academic here we are already into, most schools in the world of private schools have increased their school fees, saying that because they have done that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is not true. Now the question is, if private school, because I said earlier that government schools collect this PTA to either pay teacher add to infrastructures and all that. Private schools, they have infrastructures. Before somebody creates the school, he or she knows how he's going to run the school. And he is using the money that is paid by parents for school fees to pay the teachers. So if the person says that he or she wants money for PTA to do whatsoever with, then he is a thief. And the another lamenting aspect of it is that these teachers of this private school are they are paid with meager salaries. They're not well treated. They're poorly treated by these entrepreneurs, by these proprietors and proprietresses. All the time the guys are complaining. So if adding to that treatment of the teachers and the high school fees that are being paid by parents, and these guys think again that they should collect PTA, I say no, it is stealing. And this is, I think, the education institution were supposed to be managed by the government. If some group of people think that they are to assist the government in that part of in that sector, the educational sector, they should not come there to extract money in dubious ways from the parents of the children they are claiming to educate. So that's my take on that.
And Leona, just to add there, I was expecting that they will actually give scholarships to students as far as the PTA issue is concerned. But when you see they still collect this PTA, they don't give scholarship to students. We expect that, okay, let's say a school in Douala is collecting PTA, and if that school is collecting PTA, we expect that that school should at least give what's known as scholarships to the students around or pupils around that area. But you don't see this going. If the government schools collect PTA, we see that they give some few scholarships by norms of the government. It states that if a private school operates within a locality, that private school must give scholarship to students indigenous of that community, meaning that if we have schools in Buea, private schools in Buea that are running in Buea, they must give scholarship to indigenous sons and daughters of that community, at least 10. They must benefit. But you don't see that. We know that, okay, this PTA, if no matter how bad that we criticize it, but if this PTA is supposed to come, those 10 students or pupils at least are supposed to benefit from the money. They have small salaries being given to the teachers. You have you see the proprietor ride in cars, has series of cars, and the teachers have what we call the legacy bands, work with the leg from January to January. You see the dressing of the teacher.
So and
just to let you know that the teachers for private schools will be well paid from September, October, November, and December. From January, February, March, I start telling you there's no subvention, there's no money. My question is, where there's another one which is paining me the most is registration. Every year, adding to the PTA, every year a child needs to come to school, to that same school. And you have to register. You were in that school last year, you pay registration fee. Next year, you pay registration fee. Class 3, you pay registration fee. Class 4, you pay registration fee. Class 5, you pay registration fee. Adding to school fees, feeding money, health allowances, which you don't even see the healthcare service, which you don't even see the feeding allowances. It does give us the connotation that the state of Cameroon need to assume its full responsibility, create a commission to see into the private school sector, because there is a kind of financial chaos ongoing now within this sector, Leonard.
Okay, we are in the studio with Angui. Yes, Angui Anjo. She is the CEO, founder of an association called Dare to Live. With Anjo, we are glad to have you with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, we are going to be discussing with you very shortly, not now, on
breast cancer.
Yes, on the association that's Dare to Live with Anjo on breast cancer. I don't know, you went to school in Cameroon, and yes, you know what PTA levies is all about. What are your impressions? Parents Teachers Association paying levies.
It's been a while, but from what I remember, it was a necessary levy that the parents had to pay to substitute for stuff in school. I don't remember, but I think it was necessary at the time. Are you guys disputing that?
I was about to ask what Jarvis was saying, Mr.
Yes.
You see, talking about these malpractices that are ongoing in our schools in Cameroon.
Yeah, especially private schools.
Especially private schools, but the government schools are not left out.
Okay.
Because when we go to government schools in the northwest and the southwest, because I will tell you about places I know, it is a different scenario. You come to Douala, it's a different scenario. I bet you in Douala, I think the government school and the level of the secondary school should be about 27,000 francs. That's what they give PTA. Now, Mr. Leo, now, before your child is enrolled in that school, my brother, it's karate, because you have to see somebody to whom you will give money so that your child can get admission into those schools, into a government school, and that money always ranges from 100,000 and above before your child can enter into that school. So that's why you see the rest of private schools, because you don't pay that sum of money at once, you pay gradually, but the amount the private schools ask as fees are very, very high. Now, the consumers in Cameroon have been left on their own by the government. Anything that anybody says, no, the government does not protect the right of the consumer. If schools increase their school fees, the government says nothing. The teachers are poorly treated, who are also consumers and workers, the government says nothing. Because I bet you the Jarvis was talking about the salaries of the teachers. The private school teachers, my brother, they are suffering. They pay them 35,000 francs in Douala. How much will you rent? How much will you feed? How much will you be paying schools for their own children?
Is collecting the levies for private schools. What do they do with that money?
That's why I'm saying that it is they steal from parents. They're thieves, because they don't do anything with the money. If they should do something with the money, if they were collecting the PTA levy that they want to increase the salary of the teachers, I think I would concur with that. But they don't collect it to do that. They collect it to feed and grow fat with their children. They ride in big cars. Meanwhile, the people who work for this money, they suffer. The teachers, I am not a teacher, but I know their pain. These teachers at times are forced to organize evening classes and call on parents again to pay for those evening classes simply because their pay packages are not enough to take care of them and their families. So they are forced to look for another way out. And when they pay, when they start carrying out, creating this whole part-time classes, these evening classes, the effectiveness in class reduces. They don't give their all again during the school normal schooling hours because they want that children should stop doing well so that their parents will see a reason to send them to evening classes, and that is continuous stealing of the Cameroonians parents who have decided to send their children to school.
Now, if PTA funds are collected in private schools, do we see these schools as business ventures or are there to provide services for free? And if persons were to contribute, is it to help build a school? Is it community school or the schools belong to one individual?
It's the same thing like we say these are schools are non-profit institutions that provide services, help the government to provide services where the government is lacking or may not be able to meet up with these services. That's why the state of Cameroon at the time decided that individuals should have the responsibility or should have the opportunity to create educational institutions to catch up, to meet up with the gap, because the government understands that she cannot be everywhere in the entire 10 regions of Cameroon as the case is. That's why these schools have subvention. If you listen to 2016 during the ongoing Anglophone crisis, when the Interministerial Ad Hoc Committee was called up in Bamenda by Paul Mikot Gogomo, a 2 billion subvention was given, and some of these schools duly accredited do receive subvention from the state. And when they receive subvention from the state is not giving you the subvention to take and go buy yourself a car, a house, or to feed your wife, or to send your wife for holidays in Dubai. The state is giving you the subvention to take and see how you can improve on your infrastructure, you can improve on the salaries of your teachers, you can improve on the health care of the students, you can improve on quality assurance of the institution, and you can ensure that the school meets up with international standard, because the same students you are training will be able one day to go abroad to study, and they should catch up with the same level of which those who went to elementary schools in those areas should catch up. But the sad reality here is that the private institutions have decided to turn the situation upside down by bringing PTA levy in a situation where they ought not to have. Leonard, before you do a business, there's what we call a business plan challenge. There's what we call a business plan. You do a plan. I want to open a school, and school are non-profit. I understand. I know that the state gives this certain amount of subvention per the category of the school. Now, if I open the school, how many teachers will I be needing? I need this amount. How much is cost? Now, if you are doing that costing, I don't support the idea of even collecting PTA levy from a private school as such, because it is not a government school. The government may open up a school in Kikakiraiki in one village because they want to develop that community, and they want to reduce the distance where these students will live and go to another village to study. That's why parents in that area will team up. The idea of PTA came from parents in the early 90s, because the parents saw that when government was opening schools in these villages, there were not enough teachers to teach their kids, and they saw that the opening up of schools in this community helped develop their community in such a way that their kids could no longer go far, their culture is preserved, and their kids study within the environment and they go to the farm. That's why they thought it was that, okay, they will support the government by giving out what is known as PTA, Parents Teachers Association levy, such that they buy benches, they hire teachers, those elites who could teach, or the young men who could teach in the villages, who could not be recruited by the government. They could come and teach, and the government, they will give them this money as PTA. But now it's not the case. Many is a tradition that has been rebranded into profit-making venture. And I ask myself a question: if I have to send my kid to school in a private school, why and how should I give PTA money? And how often do they even call the PTA meeting to evaluate the amount that we're giving, to do check and balances? Rarely, sometimes never. On a scale of 1 to 5, it falls between 0, which is never. And you ask yourself, what there is the need for PTA levy? The simple need for PTA levy, Leona, in my definition, as someone who have been to North and Southwest, and now Littoral and Center, I see that it's a venture where private institution CEOs decide to buy themselves new cars, new land, get new wives, get new girlfriends, and send their kids to Dubai and their kids abroad, and why us keep languishing in the schools? The quality is not even there. Health services.
You collect this PTA, you don't even see good health. Toilet system is not there. A kid comes every day, poorly treated. The teachers are bitter not because they cannot teach, but because they see that you don't make use of the PTA. A teacher asked me one day and said, Jarvis, you expect that your kids come to this school to get knowledge, and when they come to get knowledge, how do you feel that we fit? So at the end of the day,
Esther Esther writing from Kumba says, hello Mr. Liu, good evening. No light to follow up on my Media Prime program. We pray in the name of Jesus, let light come back in your quarter. Okay, Esther, we're glad to read from you. This one says, good evening to you all. What a good debate. Private schools take a lot of money to parents and yet pay teachers very little money, which is very bad. Julie is writing from Yaoundé. Says, my brother, you are the point. Private school owners are thieves. Okay. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I don't see any reason why private schools take PTA when their fees are so exorbitant. Also, not all the government schools should be allowed to pay PTA. All those government schools in town with enough buildings and teachers should not have PTA fees. How can you ask students in Lycée Bilingue Application in Yaoundé to pay PTA with all its infrastructures and overcrowded staffs? Chene Awa is writing from Bamenda. This one says, I am for the fact that private schools should collect PTA because there are other structures that the proprietors can't afford for. For instance, building playgrounds, create food and nutrition labs, and also science lab. The government is supposed to give some money to these institutions, but they either don't give it or it comes late. Hello, Mr. Kum. I attended primary schools in the 70s and our PTA levies was 300 francs. The money was used specifically for maintaining broken benches, refilling first aid box with drugs, and there was nothing as chairman of PTA. The headmaster managed the money and accounts presented to parents at the end of the school year. Onkunji is also writing from Bamenda. This was a private school should not collect. PTA has been a business in government schools, and it's really bad. Money collected as in PTA in government schools is mismanaged. PTA should be abolished. Gustav writing from Bamenda too. Yes, many persons are watching from Bamenda. Now, somebody says they should collect PTA for in these schools, but some persons think that there are some schools that should not collect PTA levies. For example, let's take Lycée Bilingue de Bonaberi, where they already have the infrastructure, maybe the lab, and what are they collecting PTA fees for?
They are thieves. They are thieves. Money that you collect and you cannot give account to. That in a government school, you hear at the end of the year that the principal was unable to give accurate account to the parents, and he's been carried to court to explain how the money was being spent. It means that, you see, people, I don't know how I can explain it, Mr. Liu. This PTA thing is stealing, legalized stealing, that if the government does not take action, these guys will finish the parents. Sincerely, Bonaberi has infrastructure. They say that they don't have infrastructure, but yet they collect PTA. Yet before your child enters there, you must pay. If your child is living from another school into that school, you pay at least 100,000 for that child to get admission. Because when they come there, they tell them no, the classes are all full. That there's no more space for admission. You then have to look for another way to get their child in. And you give money and they don't give you any receipt. So I think that PTA, this PTA of a thing, the government should see into it, because in urban centers like Douala, Yaoundé, Bafoussam, Bamenda, it should stop. Because schools that should be talking about PTA are schools like those in the north, where because we have seen some disturbing images on social media where there is a school in which the children are studying and rain is falling at the same time. Those are people that are talking about PTA, we should be listening to them. And some of these people who have been collecting PTA that still have hundreds of millions in their coffers. I'm telling you, go to these lycées. You will see they have hundreds of millions in their coffers for PTA. Now, what are they doing with the money? If it's not that the man is taking it, the principal takes it to go and invest it in his business. So that the day that they are transferring him and he has to give account for that money, he now withdraws it from that business and put it back there where he had made profit all this while. They should take the money and see into how they will build other schools elsewhere and stop taking PTA from parents, because they are stealing from these parents in broad daylight, and it is not good. I was talking about the salaries of these teachers. My brother, they pay a teacher 25,000 francs a day in a private school, a month in a private school in Douala. If a teacher is supposed to be paid 1,000 francs an hour of teaching, a teacher has 8 hours of teaching, maybe let's say a day. It means that he's to pay 8,000 francs a day. Well, let's say a week, even he's paid 8,000 francs a week. How much will he be paid a month? If you are paid 8,000 francs a day, a month should be more than 60,000 francs. If a government pay a teacher like that, and then the other teacher who is teaching the same subject, preparing the same children to go and write the first school living and the GCE advanced and ordinary level, is being paid 35,000 francs a month. How do you expect this teacher to be happy? That teacher will tell you that I am not a happy man, because a hungry man is an angry man. If you don't feel well, you cannot give the best of you to the children you are teaching. At times they are forced to eat our children's food. I cannot remember how many times my child told me that my madam ate my bread. The madam is hungry. I just told the child that the madam also is hungry and she will eat food.
Look at briefly. Our sister here is fighting cancer, and we expect that from the different schools, we expect that this PTA levy should be collected, and you call people to come and sensitize, do educational talks for these primary schools to pick, because we start from bottom to top. But we expect that we see no training done at the level of the elementary and secondary school, away from the curriculum. We are just centered on who discovered Christopher River Niger, Mongo Park, who is Christopher Columbus. This is that. But when we come to the extracurricular activity, which the kid needs to know, especially HIV and AIDS, hepatitis, especially breast cancer, all this stuff, we only get that at the level of university or even secondary school at opposite. But we missed it because a child start learning at the basic level. Remember that your child can argue with you in your house that this is not what our sir told us. Your child believe how they say more than the way that your child will believe you. The primary school child will believe the teacher gospel truth or whatever is being told to that child from school. That some people came to our school, they told us this. No, those people who came to our school said this, or they said this. No, daddy, they said this, and you argue day in day out. Those who are watching us, who have kids from primary school, they will tell you their experience that the first 2 weeks that the child goes to school and comes back is different. The child starts arguing with you from day one that no, our sir said this, our sir said that. Now, when you bring the extracurricular activities on a daily basis, I enjoy how schools in US, elementary schools, teach their pupils and their students. They start training them on talks. They start getting them this training.
Yes.
If you correct this PTA, we expect that money should be used for those purposes to pay this. Talk to these people.
But going by an average private school in Cameroon, the fees are not so small for an average family. Adding this extra PTA for private schools, is it not increasing the financial burden on parents who, for the most part, are just suffering?
That's why earlier I said that there should be a commission to look into the situation, to harmonize the rate in which private schools put their fees at rating. It should have a standard. They should have that standard, that barometer to say that, okay, this is the limit. Whether you have a sophisticated school, you don't have a sophisticated school, this should be the limit. And there should be a criteria, and that should be strictly followed. But we don't have that. That explains the reason for the chaotic nature of financial transaction within private schools in Cameroon, especially in economic capitals like Douala. Just move some few miles away from here, you will see a school, ask the price of a primary school. An HND student who go to a university, that student is expected to pay at least 350,000 francs for university. Yes. But come to a primary school, I'm talking about primary school. When I was in government school, primary school Moya, I paid just 8,000 francs, and at the time, Kali School Moya was the only expensive private school. Your child goes to Kali School Moya, where I went to from class 5, it means that your parents have money and they paid 7,500. And that 7,500, that was in the late 90s. And you equate that now to this situation. You must have at least 400,000 to send a kid in a good school in this Douala. Sometimes minimum 250,000 to send your kid to a whatever kind of school in the Douala, excluding the registration fee, excluding the fee of transportation. And you ask yourself, where the hell is the government? We need a commission that need to look into the situation of schools, except they are telling us that there's an indirect tax that the schools are paying, that they are taking money now to pay this tax, which is not supposed to be the case.
Yeah,
that the schools are not
my focus is on the PTA levies, please. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I accept the fact that private schools should collect PTA levy, but disagree with government schools collecting it. Cletus Lemfon from Kumbu, and Bui Division, Northwest region of Cameroon. But you are not telling us why they should collect. They're collecting it for what? This one says, yes, that's true. An example, Lycée de Mendong, has a lot of bribery. Junior Cesar writing from Yaoundé. This one says, please, Mr. Liu, if you guys can do something to stop this thing of PTA, then it would be the best. PTA is another form of extorting money from parents, thieves. Irene is writing from Bamenda. Hello, good evening. The problem of PTA nowadays is a big problem. Let me cut it short. I am a student of GBHS Idea. We have paid our school fees, but up to now, we don't have a geology teacher. I would use this to invite your station to come to take the look at the strike by students in the final year. And Basil, thanks. Basil, where are you writing from? I don't know whether you are writing from Idea. Can you just get to us after the program? This one says, I'm proposing that PTA funds should be centralized, meaning that the big school collects and the money is used to build classes in areas of lack. We see horrible images on TV daily of schools with no classes, and money pay a lot of money to be made a principal because they want to manage PTA funds. Thus, a central body should be put in place to redistribute. Thanks, Bruce. Bruce is writing from where? We don't know. Emmanuel Eboué writing from Tole. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I want to ask, how can a government school survive when most of the schools are created on paper with a staff strength of about 5 persons and no classrooms? It is through the PTA that the rest can be realized. Case study, GSS Buyuku Tole. Greetings to all the peace-loving people of Tole. Good evening to you, Emmanuel. Greetings, Mr. Liu, and the panelists. I'm Faith, writing from Boya. Please, in my opinion, private schools should not collect PTA since they first of all collect huge amounts of school fees. Stop calling, please. Good evening in the house. It's C.Y. Nash from Muya. For me, PTA is not needed in private schools because I don't see anything they do with their money. Okay. Greetings to you all in the studio. Mr. Liu, I'm enjoying your program, but the thing is there isn't any thing being done with the so-called PTA levy from schools and by administration. They are merely feeding from the pockets of parents. It's Wendy writing from Tombe, that is in Kupe Mwanenguba division. We are going to discuss very briefly with our special guest who is in the house with us. Her name is Angui Anjo. And Angui Anjo is the CEO, founder of the Dare to Live with Anjo. Is it an association, foundation, or an organization?
It's a non-profit organization.
NGO.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Non-governmental organization. Yeah.
No, you don't make profit out of it.
No, we don't. 100% of what we get goes to our patients and survivors.
Yes. What do you do in Dare to Live with Anjo?
So Dare to Live with Angel is a non-profit that aims to create awareness on breast cancer, especially amongst young women. I'm a breast cancer survivor myself.
Okay.
I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018. I finished my treatment this year, February 2020. I live in the United States, so during my treatment, I kind of started thinking about the way, Cameroon, a few breast cancer patients reached out to me when I shared my story to tell me about their journey and stuff like that. And I realized that a lot of the resources that I had out there that made my journey more bearable, these patients and survivors did not have that. So I created the nonprofit Dare to Live to create awareness on breast cancer and to provide resources to breast cancer patients and survivors in Cameroon.
Yes, when you got information that you had breast cancer, how did you overcome it? You felt at the time that that was the end of life, or?
Definitely. I got the call in December 2018. The first few weeks, of course, were very devastating. I mean, the only thing I thought was, okay, I'm going to die. But I'm just like, how soon am I going to die? Am I going to die next week, next month? It was very depressing, but I started my treatment, and then as time went on and with deep thought, you know, I just realized that there was nothing I could do. I already had the breast cancer, and the only thing I could do was go through my treatment, have faith, have hope, trust in God that what will be will be. You know, you can't change what's going to happen. So, yeah, the beginning was rough, but towards the end, I realized that, hey.
Are you saying that you're completely healed today?
With cancer, cannot be cured.
Okay.
So cancer is only treated. But right now, my cancer is in remission, which means that the cancer cells are gone. Cancer, when you treat cancer, it may come back in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. You just never know. But right now, I don't have any cancer.
Yeah. And what then is your mission? What's the mission of Dare to Live?
Like I said, is to create awareness on breast cancer amongst young women. I was diagnosed at 33. So we've held a couple of awareness events. Last year we had in Bamenda, Douala, Yaoundé. This year we've had in Yaoundé. I'm going to have one in Douala tomorrow, October 17th.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just trying to create awareness, and we have a couple of patients that we've been sponsoring their treatments, and we hope to continue doing that and work with the government and other organizations to provide equipment that is necessary for the treatment and diagnosis of breast cancer patients.
What's happening in Douala tomorrow, precisely? And yeah, what are those activities that those who are expected to be a part of would engage in?
So tomorrow, October 17th, in Douala at Paco Vita, which is around the Makepe, Bonamusadi area, we're going to have a breast cancer awareness walk. Okay. We're going to meet in the morning because one of the risk factors of breast cancer is being active. If you have to be active to avoid breast cancer. They're not saying that if you're active, you will not have breast cancer, but it's just one of the risk factors. So we're going to exercise, we're going to dance, we're going to eat, we're going to have medical professionals tell us more about breast cancer, and then we're going to offer free breast cancer screening. To everybody that comes. So women, men, kids, we're inviting everybody because anybody can have breast cancer.
So,
or cancer, any type of cancer.
Yes, if you are in Douala listening or watching the program, they should join tomorrow at Paco Vita.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. Yes, there's going to
wear
be...
pink if you have.
Okay.
But we have free T-shirts for the first 50 people that make it.
Okay. There's going to be dancing, singing, jumping, exercising.
Free breast cancer screening.
And eating?
Item 11 will be top notch.
Okay, we are going to come back to you. We continue with our discussions. Far Mr. Tayong, the late Kamer, is in the house. We have been discussing about PTA levies, especially in private schools, and we have been discussing already. Far Mr. Tayong, you have been investigating a situation in the Mungo division. Can we actually understand what is happening out there?
Well, you know, in the Mungo division, I picked that area as an aspect of case study because the same scenario you find in Mungo division is a similar scenario you will find in Fako division. Is a similar situation you will find in Mifi and Afamba. It means that it is a system that works within a system, whereby if you look around the general story and the law that had been touched several times, ministerial law on issues of parents, you discover that it had first of all suffered a bone of contention, whereby it came to a point in time even the government schools themselves were also from the government level collecting pay. And it came to a point the adjustments that was done was the fact that schools that could collect PTA should show proof beyond reasonable doubt that they have dying of maybe infrastructure, some other developments that show that the state to them at that point. What came into place was the fact that away from the Mungo issue was that when PTA is coming up, it should be in accordance with the parents and not imposed on the parents. Now, I carry studies both in Mungo and Fako division because today I was also in the Fako division. And in the Mungo division, I realized if you take from Kongsamba, you take to Melong, you have many of those schools along that line. If you go to Mbanga also, you have many of those schools that institute PTA within their framework, especially private schools in that matter. In Banga, you will get that. In Melong, you will get that. You go over to Suza, you have most of those things. And the worrying factor is those things go scot-free with administrative authorities being aware, because you are paid and you are issued receipt for it. So it means that it's something that the people collect, the schools collect knowingly. Now, what was even worrying compared to what I did in Mungo and what I discovered in Limburg was another cacophony that comes into play to also give another comparative and juxtaposition aspect of the analysis we find here. For example, when I went to FACO, I was in at GHS Limburg today, and the worrying factor was that first cycle, they pay 15,000 francs CFA. For PTA. PTA. They are listening to me. 15,000 francs for all students and 19,500 francs for new students.
PTA. Yeah.
PTA fee. From one students are about 287 of them taken. It means that if you, I'm talking about from one, you take 19,500 francs times. And this is a school that has infrastructures. This is a school that has computer lab. And these are things that have been collected over the years, even before now. And so, at the period of time we talk about IDPs have been displaced, many of them are in Limbe, many of them are in the Mungo, along the Mungo corridor. You realize here that the worrying aspect is for private schools, which they're not supposed to collect, because you cannot have your business and then you want parents to come and help you build a business for you. It means you are not prepared for it. Now, on the side of the government, it becomes another worrying factor that you get this kind of PTA. Then what is the issue now? For forms at GHS Limbe, all the forms you purchase, the forms for new students for 2,000 francs CFA. The photography form that has a stamp of the school is 1,000 francs. And then there are two types of forms when you are applying. The first form is that which you can go and then they put in the electronic stamp of it, which is 1,000 francs, giving you a total of 2,000 francs. The other one is that which you go, there's no electronic stamp on it, but the administrator signs on it with a pen, showing that that's the offer of stamp, still 2,000 francs. Now, if you take 2,000 francs for the stamp, for the form, only for form 1, times 250, you can imagine how much comes in. I talk about over 500,000 francs. That one is just that one. Now, if you look at even the PTA factor or the like, the schools have deduced means to extract money from the parents. My worry here, that I'm championing that fight, is that whether in Limbe, whether in Boya, most of those who have come from those areas were not in those areas originally. Majority are those who have had the push factor at the level of population movement. So when they come here, for example, if you go to GHS Limbe, school fees for first cycle, away from all what I've mentioned, is 7,500 francs. What is the school doing? The school tells you you pay a charge of plus 500 francs. Whereas if you follow the mobile money, as the minister said, it will give you about 150 as per that. So imagine 350 times over 4,800 students in GHS Limbe. You could imagine that. Now, if you go to the same thing like for those who are in the second cycle, at GHS Limbe, they pay 10,500 francs. Now, instead of those telling you pay, I think that that could be 150. If you take 350 times another 1,000 of students for high school, which they have more than 3,000 students.
That is for the private, the public school and the private schools.
And the private.
Now, these private schools, what are they doing with the monies collected as PTA?
Now, what the schools they do is that they use the money the way they have to use. You know, the same scenario moves even with mission schools. That you have monies put in rubrics. The only difference with the government is that for the school fees goes into a particular coffers, while that which is now accounted for, the 300,000 francs extra for the charges goes to another account. Now, for the private, what happens is that just the same like mission, they will tell you Bible fee, this amount, mission, you have to pay this. Those things are just rubrics for rubrics' sake. By the end, they are collected under one general budget because they fall under one account, which is used in managing the affairs of the school. So, but the question now is, do you have your structures, and then you expect the people now to come and help you build it? Now, which is your private structure because it's your private business. It means that somewhere along the line, you were not surely prepared for the business. And so, the worst of it is that since school started, you bear me that no PTA meeting has taken place. I said none. So if you ask, in the private schools that take 5,000, those that take 7,000 PTA, those that take 10,000, in the government school that takes 15,000 francs CFA and 19,505 for new students, you ask, when was PTA meeting held? That the parents accepted that, okay, this is the amount we are going to give. And you could imagine that we are still talking, these are serious issues. I am still to get to the other schools in FACO, but you discover that with the private schools, the worry is, the only difference is that their own fee their own PTA levy will not be as much as compared to what the government will do scot-free.
These are independent findings he got out there as a journalist. Do we think that the government structures that are supposed to regulate the activities of these schools, especially with consideration of the collected finances, are they doing the job? Because these schools, they are supervised by either the regional, the divisional, the subdivisional delegates, both public and private.
Yeah, I think the government is doing nothing. They are doing nothing because if they are doing something, then the agents, the delegates, and the subdivisional delegates and the divisional delegates are thieves. Because look, for example, when we talk about these schools, these private schools, the teachers of these private schools are supposed to be registered with the National Social Insurance Fund, the CNPS. Well, I have met teachers and I asked them, they said no, they have never been registered. When you go and tell the officials of the Social Insurance Fund to come to those schools and carry out the control, they come there and receive their brown envelope and disappear. That's the same scenario that is being seen when those who come to control, the inspectors. Because I bet you inspectors come to this school and they know all these malpractices that are going on, but nobody does anything because it's they have points of, they call it manjoa. That means they're eating points.
Yeah.
This is my sector, I eat there, don't touch my sector. Another person has his own sector where he eats. Nobody touches it. You go there, just collect your bank envelope, you put it in your pocket and you forget about the rest. So I think that the government has to step up and make sure that they recruit honest people. Because you cannot recruit a thief to go and control another thief. They will mix together and make sure that they carry out the grand theft. So government should recruit people of good faith. That's why most of the time I say that people should repent and give their life to Christ. Because if everybody was a Christian, then at least they will have the fear of God that when they go to do their job, they will do it well.
You say they will mix up to do what?
Yeah, it's just like if you send a chef Bangti to go and meet a Nangamboko, to go and control a Nangamboko, they will go to the Nangamboko and say, no, come let me give you training, you did not do it well. So that's what is happening. So I think that the government has to stand up. Because the government is very relaxed on this matter, and the thing is eating us deep.
No, but this aspect to find private schools engaged in PTA fee collection, does it also expose the fact that at creation the government did not do its job to ensure that the school has the required infrastructure, competent staff? Because if that was taken into account, what would be the reason for the collection of PTA fees, especially for private schools?
I want to cue to what Tanfu said. You take a thief to educate a thief, and you get grand theft. The situation is quite not just complex, but highly what we call it's a network. For example, Leonard, how we explain that? Let me know, even before coming to example, in the late 90s and the early 2000s, you will see that when inspectors are coming, the school is neat. Yeah. Everybody is at Atakimbo, what we call Atakimbo. But now we don't see that. Now we don't see a situation where when inspectors are coming, it's a mere affair of the CEO or the founder and the inspector. And how do you explain that? You come to a school that they have poor toilet system. You come to a school where they don't have adequate drinking water system. You come to a school where the gates are falling. You come to a school where benches are kind of hairway. You come to a school which is more of like the structures are dilapidating, and you have done control in that school. This is what it takes to create a school in Cameroon. The first thing is that you have to apply. The second thing is you have to show proof that you have a pitch, a playing ground. A playing ground is very important, that you have a playing ground where those pupils, those students will come and play. The next issue is that you have the staff strength to handle this teaching, and the staff strength, you send the documents of your teachers you have recruited. When you send the documents of your teachers, it's been examined to understand
whether you have the manpower. The next issue is a bank account. A bank statement is needed, and that bank statement goes to cover for 5 years maximum to show that when you start this venture, you remember that it's a non-profit making institution. Thus, you are not coming to make profit. That's why you need to show a bank statement and your main source of revenue to fund the school. And these are things you must do. The next aspect you must do, you must ensure that the teachers have what we call the CMPS, or the social insurance scheme, which implies that when the teachers are on leave, or when the teachers are incapacitated, they benefit from this social insurance scheme. Their children benefit from this social insurance scheme. And you must have teachers with social insurance scheme before you approve. But the sad reality there is that it is an upside down situation. Thus, you must not have a field before you open the school. You must not have all these things before you open the school. And the situation is chaotic because people have turned it to be a profit making venture. The regional delegates use it as an opportunity. The divisional delegates use it as an opportunity to buy new cars, to buy new houses. You go and see the houses and the cars.
You are going to answer to this televiewer, but let me take some of their messages. I'm Walters, writing from Bonaberi in Douala. PTA is a very important tool in schools. The state doesn't provide benches to schools, water. PTA teachers are recruited by the head teacher. If PTA is not collected, most of our schools will be dilapidated. Your panel members are not well placed to tell the public about PTA because they are not examples. I think, Mr. Liu, next time you have a problem like this, you bring in head teachers to tell us more. Bring in a headmaster. Mr. Tayon, you are not a head teacher, so you cannot feel the absence of PTA. If your child goes to school and discover that the government has sent some teachers, the head teacher can improvise from PTA money. Please, your panel members are talking without any base, okay? Tayon, I hope you've taken note.
I take that. No. I take it as I'll reply to that person because it's more of an insult. He doesn't know who we are too.
No, let me take. Hello, Mr. Liu. I'm Kylons from Limbe. I wish to chat with the kangaroo man privately. Help me connect to him. I love your program so much. Can you just write to me after the program you connect with him? This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu. PTA fees of GBHS downtown Bamenda is 25,000 francs for new students, while old students pay 10,000 francs. Eno is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. This is Victorine from Limbe. I am of the opinion that private schools should not collect PTA because their fees are far more huge, and as such, private school owners don't do anything with the money collected from parents. For example, in New Horizon International Comprehensive High School Limbe, a student pays more than 100,000 francs CFA, yet parents buy official wares and toiletries for their children separately. Okay, this one says, please, how can I contact you? I am in Edea, student of GBHS Edea. I went to GBHS Edea. I had my advanced level there. We have a serious problem in school about PTA money with no teachers. Please do send someone to come and hear us, okay? Just write, contact me after the program. Thanks very much for the program, Mr. Liu. GHS Batoke Limbe pays 20,000 francs for PTA alone. It's too much. William is writing from Limbe. This one says, it's really a scam. Proprietors take money for yet they don't pay teachers well, and teachers will also have to depend on parents by and means. Hence, the parent is the victim, so parents should oblige proprietors to pay their teachers well. Maurice is writing from Yaoundé. Anito Eno Takan is sending greetings to you, Anjo, saying that she's happy to watch you on TV. Good evening to you, Mr. Liu. In government schools today, they collect money from parents saying it's money for the students' bench, claiming the benches are full. But when you as a student go to school, you already find 4 people in the same bench. They say you both say no to such things. Freddy is writing from Tico. Hi, we should ask what PTA means. PTA levy. Money is supposed to end with parents to see the betterment of children. No principal or head teacher should smell that money. This one says, instead for me, private schools teachers more than public because they don't joke with their salaries, but yet they are not paid. So where is the PTA going to? No scholarship and the rest. PTA should be stopped in such institutions. Is Sinash writing from Muya? Yes.
Yes, let me answer the person who just wrote. You know, as we are on Emini, people don't know what we carry. I have taught for more than 7 years. Let me remind the man. Boya Bilingual High School, Oxford Bilingual Evening School in Gardens, Limbe. We have BBH, Boya Bilingual High School. In fact, there are quite a many of them. Salvation, Mutene Bilingual College in those days. I have taught for more than 7 years, teaching all level and advanced level. This journalism, I just entered. So let me inform the man talking that I master school business in my text, as in my palms, as someone who has taught in the school milieu for long. Probably I never told you that I've been a teacher. Find out from people who are watching us, and they'll tell you that I have taught religion, taught philosophy, taught history, taught law and government and civics at the same time in the school milieu. So, in a nutshell, to come back to what the guy who wrote was saying, you know, these are people who are actually accomplices to the PTA mafia. Yes. Because when you are an accomplice to the PTA mafia, you tend to defend it. We are talking at a time whereby, look at, for example, let's take for example the JSNM I'm talking about. That school has been existing for more than 35 years. Infrastructure has been put in place with PTA collected every year till today. What expansion of 15,000 francs and 19,500 francs will you tell me is involved in that? All right, let's come back to the issue of primary schools. When we talk about issues, I have the impression the man who just texts does not know the meaning of PTA. Parents Teachers Association. It simply means for anything to be initiated, if it has been initiated, the parents must come together and agree themselves, not the school imposing on the parents. I have said, the man who just wrote, remind me if there has been any PTA meeting since school started. Text me here, I will clap for you with pictures to show that PTA meeting held and it was started. So, what am I saying? School is not supposed to decide how much how much parents will pay, because it's not teachers association, it is parents teacher association, which means that the parents are the center of that collection. Maybe
that amount was agreed on last year.
Oh, but a new parents coming in.
No. We're talking about a new administration that takes in a new school, and when you come to accept it, the first thing is we want to ask ourselves, what do we collect this money for? In the first place, Mr. Leo, there are sums of money that you cannot accept it as being normal. If it is 2,500, 3,000, 1,500, you can begin to condone. 15,000 francs is already above school fees for the first cycle. And if you put 15,000 francs, you put the 2,000 francs for form. We are still talking, these are other malpractices. Just imagine, and you are looking as if it's not money. If you are losing 2,000, you have sportwear 3,500. You start losing all those things. You have medical booklet that you have never seen. You never seen a medical booklet for 1,000 francs times how many thousand of students? These are illegal collections that go along the line. So what I think is that any school that requires PTA to be collected, you should also know that the amount matters a lot and should be decided by parents and not by the school administration imposed on the parents. What I'm saying is this: I have started the campaign. I know Jarvis will be me. I know Babatafo will be me. Principals who are collecting those monies, you will refund the money, because we will follow you till we get into a 2D. Any money you collect, don't use it, keep it, because a decree must come. You will refund those monies where you are taking 15,000, 19,500, a year, but okay, 20,000 francs. We are still on the ground. And they are calling us to come here a day. We will come. All those principals that you think that you want to take advantage of the people who have displaced themselves and they are queuing up. Even admission requirements in some of those schools is a hell.
Yes.
I have been on the ground. I'll still give you more revelations.
Okay.
Just to get admission now, when the minister is finding that this is the period they want you to go to school, and they are not, you are supposed to accommodate people, not make issues complicated.
But now, the issue keep coming. The schools that are already very big, that have been existing for 40 years, and we are collecting PTA for 25,000, 90,000, and the rest, is it for what?
Mr. Tayo, there is a very pertinent point there. He says that when they talk about PTA, Parents Teacher Association, PTA fee, Parents Teacher Association fee, which means that the parents have to come and sit, the teachers come and sit. They now agree that because of this reason, because of this need, because of this lack, we should see how we put our head together to see how we can raise some funds to solve this problem.
But I'm sure such meetings hold before the end of the school year, because
during the holidays, the wind can blow the roof off. Mr. Kum.
There
So there was corona shutdown, and so many things went wrong within the whole days in the week.
So when was that decision taken?
So this can happen. So we consider that if it is a parent-teacher association, and if they held it last year, how many new children, the parents are coming in with their children this year? Should they impose it on them? No. Everybody has a right to decide what is going to what the money for PTA is going to be used for. Yeah. So teachers should come and sit. The parents come and sit. They see the need and agree that it's a need and that they have to solve it. Yep. Because you can see it as a need, and I as a parent, I don't see it that is my problem. Yep. I don't see it as a problem to myself. So I think that if this has not been the case, because if it were the case even, it is not every year that the PTA is supposed to be paid. Because it's not every year that school encounter problems. It's not every year that the benches are lacking because children are graduating.
Yeah, but are we very comfortable that PTA fees for a school stands at 20,000 for 10 years, irrespective of the needs?
The needs cannot be standard. But every year the needs remain 20,000.
Call them thieves.
There's no other word I can use, Mr. Yo. Forgive me, because we cannot say that
we take exception to calling.
Okay, I will not call the name again. We can choose them under maybe 419ers, because if you say that PTA every year should be 20,000, does that mean that every year the school is in standard is a problem?
I think that parent or teacher who insulted us should render an apology.
No, just make your point.
My point is, some of us, I want to give a full disclosure.
No, not everybody.
I want to give. No, it is not praising, but sometimes we must correct people because
just make your point.
My point is, I am a director of communication of a school, a university. I have taught in a school in Moya and in Moliko, from secondary school. It is not my look should not make that person feel that I'm kind of a 20. And when we are talking from fact. We are not talking based on emotions. Yeah. So when someone sits in a two-bedroom squad and data for 100 and feel like he can just rain insult on people who have done in-depth research, both qualitative and quantitative research, to come and say why and how PTA should be collected, I think these are just the people who work on Prados and let their teachers work on their legs and want to teach. Now on the point of the matter, I think this is what needs to be done, Leonard. The government still have that role to police the private schools. And the private schools have the role to collaborate with the government to ensure. And the parents too at the center. It's a triple helix system. It's not a system just of the government and the private school teachers, but the parents too are not helping matters. Because some of these parents, let me tell you, are PTA board chairs. And some of them encourage this. There is no school that runs with that PTA board chair. Ask yourself, who is a PTA board chair? And that PTA board chair, sometimes they tell the schools how and what to do to collect those monies. Yeah. And they don't give account to this money. I remember when I was in secondary school, that was in 2001, when we had board chair of a PTA who stood there for more than 10 years. And when we graduated, we went to university, we finished university, he was still the PTA board chair of that school. And you ask yourself, how much have they been able to give an account to the Parent Teacher Association? Anytime the Parent Teacher Association is meeting, the issue of budget is always suspended. And what then is done with the money? To me, I feel like, how on earth would a school collect 20,000 francs for PTA? And that 20,000 francs that we had for Batoke, 20 is a government school. What are they doing the money? When I left government school, Bombe Bakunda, I came to Lycée Bilal Moliko. Lycée Bilal Moliko, where I studied, I discovered that they already had structures in place. And when we had these structures, we were still paying PTA. I asked myself at the time, where and how is this PTA going? Because
but for Lycée Bilal Moliko, they recently constructed.
We understood that they recently constructed two labs based on it was because of the influx of students who had run away from the other areas. Now, at the time, we had buildings that we were not using. We had a lot of buildings in the same Bilal Moliko that we were not using. It's only thanks to the crisis somehow that they managed to occupy the entire building. And let me tell you, when this crisis will stabilize, you go to that same school, a lot of buildings were not being used. We had the S1, S2, S3 building, the total downfall was not being used because the enough students were not there. Remember, at the point in time, it was just the lone government school that was existing.
Yeah, but if people don't have enough students,
that's what I'm saying. But they still collect PTA. You don't have enough students. The PTA is standard. Like Tamfu said, how on earth will the same
problem be that is consistent. Every year is 20,000, 20,000. There is a normal phenomenon that before there's what called a budget. A budget is an estimate that shows revenue and expenditure within the next fiscal year or financial year. And you must sit as in a PTA meeting to draft the budget of the PTA. And you know that, okay, this year we're expecting that we may have this number of students. So PTA should either go 5,000 or 10,000, which is not the case.
The messages are just so many. Good evening, Mr. Leo. This is Justice Longang from Edea. I strongly wish you guys come to serious investigations in Edea concerning this PTA levy. Can't imagine as a parent are paying 27,000 francs as PTA levy in GBHS Edea, one without a PTA teacher in the Anglophone section. The section is well staffed by the government teachers. Even during PTA meetings, teachers are hardly invited. If that PTA levy existed when the school had mostly part-timers, then it should be reduced when government teachers have been sent there. Okay? Many persons writing from Edea. I would love to come back there.
We have to visit that Edea.
Yes. Yes. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I don't buy the idea of schools in urban areas to pay PTA levy because they cannot account for, and also no private school should ask for PTA because it's a private business and can be closed at any time. And also, that's why we pay higher fees for our children. I'm Zantu, writing from Dubai. Good evening to you, Zantu. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I really love the topic for today. PTA fees has been a good idea, but let me tell you that it is through PTA fees that principals feed fire. Principals work with the delegates to mismanage PTA fees. Oben Wilson, writing from Buitingi in Boya. This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu. Is Nchu Edwin is my name. Today, not only PTA is collected to, there is another one coming up with a Christmas tree planting, which is 5,000 francs. The school proprietors collect the money and offer bread and butter to the peoples and keep the money for themselves. I am writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you. Okay, Brown says, I love it. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I am a parent of GBHS Nkong Samba. Please, we are tired of PTA levy. We paid much money for PTA more than school fees. Please, the government should help us, parents, because we are really suffering for that. I prefer private schools should collect PTA, not government schools. What bothers me much is because the schools had already structured so what are they doing with those millions? Thank you. I love your program. Thank you very much, and good evening to you. Ngong Waters Koi, who is watching us from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I think private schools should not collect PTA fees, but I think government schools should collect PTA in order to assist the government on building learning facilities. Annie writing from Bamenda. Good evening. I'm Karen writing from Ngambetika. I am in support that PTA should be paid. In my school, we have just one government teacher, 6 PTA. So without PTA, the school can't function. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm really enjoying your program, but this PTA thing is really getting me annoyed. The fact that these private institutions are squandering parents' money indirectly in the name of PTA is Sandra writing from Limbe. Good evening to you, Sandra. Mr. Liu, good evening. Thanks for this program. I'm Sang Broka. Mr. Liu, please, I want to know the work of CONAC in Cameroon. All this corruption should be handled by CONAC, not another commission again. Okay. Mr. Daniel writing from Boya says, good evening, Mr. Liu and panelists. Thank very much for coming up with this topic. I wish PTA and teachers' salaries in private schools should be harmonized to avoid exploring teachers. Daniel. Now, many persons think that the money that is collected should also be reflected in the quality of the PTA teachers in most of our schools. Is it reflected? Because I spoke with 3 of them who said they are shabbily paid. Why collect so much millions and then you don't pay them very well?
Yes, I think, you know, the issue is the agenda behind the collection.
Okay.
The agenda is for the principals and the mafia PTA executives to make their money. They only pretend that they don't have enough staff. Take, for example, if you are collecting 19,500 francs times, say, 3,000 new students. Now, how do you quantify that when you have only about 6 or 7 PTA teachers who are on 40,000 francs per month? And it's not regular, that's for 9 months. 40,000 for 9 months. You discover that it means about 2 students are paying are paying one teacher. It gives you about 57 million.
57 million.
57 million for CFA. And for these teachers, you will pay them only for about 9 months for the school year, which goes ahead. So what happens with the amount? And when you are coming up for the next academic year to collect another 20,000 francs, there is no inventory of this is what was spent, this is what was left. You get the point. So that because a real school that is transparent, if you have 57 million that you collect, I want to keep aside the other illegal collections from registration form, medical form and all the like.
Tree planting.
Now, tree planting and all the like. If you have that kind of money, now take for example that, how do you understand that as the year goes through, you have leftover, but the PTA and the principals and the HMs never come back to tell you that this was carried over for last year. If you want to tell you on paper that we had about 1 was carried over, they have what they call budgetary head that they inflate overnight. It's a whole mafia mechanism. That's why it is not any kind of person who enters the board. The PTA executive board is not any kind of person. You must be able to understand the mafia of the game. Now, the worrying issue here is this. When these monies are collected, according to NIT, one will understand. So that's why I say that somebody text, which is correct. In the urban areas, it has no use even. Because even before the crisis, many teachers had looked for transfer in the urban areas. If you go to GBHS, downtown Bamenda, you go to GBHS Bamenda and all those big schools in the urban areas, they are even oversaturated teachers. Because no longer are looking for transfer. Why? Because they can't do business in town. So you come in, literature teacher is saturated. History department saturated. Economy department saturated. In that case, it means the PTA has no use. If they talk about a new school, maybe in Gunakwa, in Tuambeng, or in Furawa, or in Kumu, so that one can be understood. But by the way, why you are understanding it, the amount to be collected matters a lot. Because even the teachers in that area will not collect the same like those in urban areas. Those who are in the urban areas, maximum they take is 50,000 francs. If it wants to be too much, and from number of periods you put in place. So if you look at the number of students who come in, you'll be imagining that it's a whole mafia sector that it needs to be dismantled.
We have to part ways with our special guest Anjo, who is going to be taking leave. She's leaving the studios any moment from now. Yes, can you just remind our televiewers on what is happening in Douala tomorrow, precisely at the Pakuvita?
Yes, so tomorrow at 7 a.m., Saturday, October 17th, we will be at the Pakuvita to do a breast cancer awareness walk. Starting at 7 a.m., we're going to do a walk, we're going to do some exercise, we're going to have a medical professional do a talk on breast cancer, and then we're going to offer free breast cancer screening to everyone that's going to come, men, women, kids, everybody's invited.
And the food, because
there's enough food. You will love the food. There's a variety of good stuff.
Okay, yeah, but the message for those who may not even come there is to know that even with their cancer, there is still hope, there is life.
Yes, but early detection saves lives. Be proactive, go to the doctor and do your checkup. And if you do, if you're diagnosed with anything, cancer, it's okay. Just try to go through your treatment and have faith, have hope, be optimistic.
Okay.
Those who may not be able to come, any link, any Facebook website.
Oh yes, to know more about us, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Dare to Live with Anjo, and our website is www.daretolivewithanjo.org.
Okay, thank you for coming, Anjo.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, definitely we are going to.
We are coming to eat.
We are going to be there tomorrow. Yes. No, we are coming to. No.
Yeah, men have to screen. They have to screen the men too.
We are coming to get the lessons from the expert who will be there tomorrow. Yeah. So thank you for coming, and a blessed evening for you. We are continuing with the program. Yes.
So I was about if we calculate this money, that and it gives us 57 million, as Mr. Tayon said earlier. If we are to take 9 PTA teachers, for example, and pay them per year, we will expect a PTA teacher to receive at least 6,333,000 francs a year. Is if the estimated payment of a teacher is 100,000 a month, a month. A school year is now 900,000.
Which will not be 100, sir.
I just want to exaggerate.
Okay.
So that we see that
there's still no balance.
There's still no balance in the coffers.
No, they are not thieves. They are 419ers.
They are 419ers. These guys, they look for this money so that they can add the number of their concubines and girlfriends. Because I don't see any reason on earth where they are enough teachers. Because if the question is that we have teachers lacking in the rural areas, why should teachers leave? Why should government grant transfer to teachers to urban areas, whereas there is a need for teachers in rural areas? Government has the role to dispatch teachers according to need. If the teachers needed in the rural areas, the government should provide teachers there and not carry all the teachers, concentrate them in urban areas where they lack in the rural areas, and imposing a PTA levy on the parents who are already in a very how can I call it? They are suffering.
They are suffering already.
They are suffering already, and you want to add to their pain. I will say no. Whosoever they want to call me name, I am a parent, and I feel the pain of parent. Mr. Taro say I have been a teacher. Mr. President has been a teacher, and they are all parents. So and those teachers are also our friends who are poorly paid. Because we're talking about PTA and all the these guys collect the money and the teachers don't see it. Because when they unfortunately, when those who come for control, the inspectors, when they come, they don't even meet the teachers. Because if they meet the teachers, they end at the office of the principals and go back. Collect the envelopes and go back. I think the government should stand up and see into how, because you cannot be doing the same thing year in year out and expect different result, Mr. Tata. If the government has been sending out inspectors every year and these malpractices are going on, it means that there's something wrong somewhere. The government are best placed to know what to do.
Okay, the government is best placed to know what to do. Somebody is proposing that there should be a regional meeting that will bring parents together in Sebamenda or Boya or Douala to come to redefine the purpose of the PTA.
That's why earlier I said it is not just an issue of the government and the private schools. It's a triple helix system where the government, the private school, and the parents come and look at this issue. And the parents too have been helping this because they are long silence and crying. The silence majority.
They cry in silence.
The silence majority.
Us in silence.
They cry because they feel like maybe what if we speak now at this school, we start brandishing our names and the rest. But Leonard, there is a need for parents to come together as that proposer so that they can see and redefine the framework of PTA within the context of providing services to the schools that matter. Fee for that school is 10,000 francs. Then the health service for that school is 5,000 francs. Medical fee, you sum up all a total approximately dancing between 150,000 francs for a primary school, not even a secondary school, a primary school. And you start looking at that primary school. You look at you look at a primary school that has 500 students or pupils times 150,000 francs times 500 pupils, and you look at the state subventions being given to these same schools, and you ask yourself, you extract now the 15,000 francs of PTA. Where does that PTA money go to? I was expecting that if we are collecting PTA for government schools, PTA is, like I earlier said, that PTA was brought because Cameroon government opened up schools in areas in the villages in an essence of developing these villages and ensuring that students should not leave the village and go right down to a certain area to study. Now this village community leaders sat and saw the need that this school will bring development. There is that need for us to help the government to develop these schools by providing benches, chairs, roofing sheets, and the rest in what became known as PTA levy, and that was transferred into a monetized into a liquidity preference. That's a desire for more of a cash. And when that came into existence, at that time we had more of government schools. You remember that private schools started proliferating in the late 2000s. Between early 90s and early 2000s, we had more of government schools, and that's why PTA at that time was very vibrant, very active. Like in the various villages in Bonakanda, Bokwai, Bova, Bitingi, all these villages, they needed PTA teachers and PTA levy so that they can pay PTA teachers to teach. But when with the proliferation of private schools, where schools now were open, everybody had access to school, teachers have been trained, ENS have graduated series of
of batches of teachers. We cannot stick with crying of teachers or shortages of teachers till now, where we have in an ENS concours which is launched, we had just a minimum. We had about, you can have about tens of thousands of people registered to just go and get trained as teachers. At the end of the day, a handful is selected. Why don't we open now the system? Say, okay, we have been crying of shortages of teachers. Let's open up the system and train teachers. And a lot of those who go to private higher institution training, they don't have jobs. Why don't you recruit these same persons? We cannot be crying of teacher shortages every day. My plea is that the parents should come together, form an association. It's not just that they should just leave it at the hands of crying in their houses. They should form an association and say enough is enough of this exploitation. And CONAC should not limit itself to the level of ministries, to the level of government offices. CONAC should come now to
for CONAC to be able to investigate, they should receive reports, which means that let the teachers, let the parents who are not satisfied with the way their monies are being managed get to CONAC to open up investigations in some of these schools. GSL, should PTA paid staffs be paid by the principal or the PTA treasurer? Principals in Bamenda have been asked to be budget executors of PTA funds. PTA levies should be stopped and let government take her responsibility. Enough is enough. Regional and divisional delegates have eyes on PTA money. Ngu Barnabas Ngu is writing from Bamenda. Most of these delegates, principals, and teachers have no kids in government schools. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I love this topic of today. I upload the panel in your studio. They are objective in their way of presentation. Proprietors and principals are really illegally exploiting monies from parents. I think the ministries in charge should look into this matter as a matter of emergency before these unscrupulous individuals send us into our early graves. Bernard Tanku is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. My problem is not even PTA. My problem is the bribe they are taking before asking of PTA school fees. I ask myself, when has government school become a source of income to the government? Lovi School is writing from Douala. This one says, you guys are great. This is a topic. The government has good intentions, but the school authorities have spoiled it. Okay. Oliver writing from Bamenda says, good evening to you and your learned panelists. The issue of PTA does not fit in every context. PTA levy is applicable only in newly created government schools that do not have adequate staffing and infrastructure. It is not applicable at all in schools that are already standing firm, like GHS Limbe and the rest. For private schools, the notion of PTA is completely out of place. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. It's Kimberly from Limba. I love your program. Please, for the Kangaroos man's number, can you guys get to me later? Good evening, Mr. Liu. This is Azivo Anjinwi writing from Bonaberry. My child is in Lycée Bileng, Sodiko, Bonaberry, and the PTA there is 33,500. Please, can you guys verify where these funds are siphoned to?
Hear from
okay.
us.
Good evening, my brothers. I think we should not talk much because even the presidency and the president know that PTA money is mismanaged. Reason why we talk and nothing is changing. Blame the system and not the school officials. Mondi is writing from Limbe. Greetings, Mr. Liu. I am Josephine writing from Bamenda. There should be no PTA in government schools. Reason being that the government should try to employ all trained teachers and send to schools that are short of teachers. Okay. Muke Bang says, good evening, Leonard and panel members. Jones, keep calm. But to me, PTA should be dissolved in private schools. Any school that asks for PTA levy from parents should be banned. It is a form of scam. Proprietors should do that, enrich their pockets with the PTA levy, use it to create more schools just to make monies for themselves. But pay teachers 35,000 francs as salary to teachers, like what Jones said. If any school should go in for a PTA levy, it should be government primary schools in villages, not even government primary schools in towns and cities. Okay. Muki writing from Douala here. Edwin, greetings, my brothers from Yaoundé. Don't only talk about PTA. Some schools collect registration fees of 25,000 francs away from the fees and PTA. All this goes to the hands of proprietors. Edwin is writing from Menka. Okay, Edwin, good evening to you. Oops, the messages difficult to read. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I like the debate because I have been a teacher in a private school in Yaoundé. Collecting PTA in private school is a waste since the money is not used for the purpose it deserves. Some schools pay teachers 800 francs an hour, while proprietors use the subventions given by the government to purchase cars worth 35 million francs CFA. Barrister Elive watching from Yaoundé. Now, how do we ensure that PTA levies are judiciously used, and is there need to dissolve the collection in some schools?
I think this question is coming at the right time. I remember some 80 years ago when the issue of the computer lab at Balinga Grammar School, Monaco, was hot. Until the students even blocked the road, and it caused authorities to come in to rectify money that was collected for computer lab, 5,000 francs, and nothing was changing every year. Now, in the issue of the PTA, even though the delegates themselves are accomplices, I repeat, divisional, regional, their hands are inside. Now, the only way that this thing can be done is that for the urban areas, they are supposed to disband the activities of PTA from the House of Principals. In GHS Limbe, they are paying, but the bossa is all collecting the money. As to that, bossa is collecting PTA fee, issuing receipt for fee, and issuing receipt for PTA. You start asking, like somebody wrote here, is this supposed to be collected by the PTA treasurer or the boss of the school? The mafia is enormous. So at the end of it, what we realize here is that if they want to solve the PTA issue, there should be a clear cut between the parents association and the teachers. What they call PTA, parents association, should be. So once it's kept aside, because under normal condition, the text mandates principals only to be as supervising authorities, which means they can be signatory to the withdrawals at the level of the account of the PTA, but not to take part in the management and in the payment, as schools are now the ones paying PTA teachers. End of month, you come and meet with the bossa, and your money is disbursed. You are supposed to meet by the PTA treasurer, who is supposed to be the one to go to the bank and claim the money. So once that dichotomy is done, whereby the PTA executives mount the money, while the principals are only serve as supervising authority over that budget, you will see transparency.
Yeah, but should the parents not also ensure that the PTA teachers who are taken to teach in some of these schools are well paid?
The parents are supposed to do that. But where is the issue coming from? Let me tell you the mafia of PTA meetings. PTA meetings will tell you we are in need of 5 or 6 additional teachers because we are short of them. But they don't tell that for these teachers, this is the amount, how much do you think they can be paid? So the parents who are not members of the executive are not giving room to propose how much they think the teachers can be paid.
They are not even aware.
They are not even aware. That is where they become powerless. That's why I said the mafia of PTA is that the president, the treasurer, the financial secretary, these are the main persons who man that executive man team made up of thousands of parents in a school. So you could imagine why people fight to become PTA chairpersons. And once you are fighting, the principal must also be aware. Yes. Because no principal want to work with a recalcitrant PTA chairman, where you want to tell the principal, don't touch this, don't touch that. No principal or no principal and divisional delegate will support a candidacy of a parent. That's why most of the parents are in the system. Either you are a member of the CPDM, or you are a member of one thing or the other, or you have what. That is the bitter truth.
Why do you bring politics into this?
I am sorry to say that because everything is politics.
Okay.
Find out the political inclination of most of the PTA chairpersons.
Good evening, Mr. Leo and Marcel from Boya. Please, this issue of PTA is really hurting in school. PTA teachers just have 40,000 francs as fees, but no increase in the salaries for over 2 years now. Are we not slaves in our country? The government herself does not even absorb some of these PTA teachers. Good evening to Jarvis and the crew. Good evening to you too. Mr. Leo, this is Luzette writing from Boya. All schools should pay PTA fees, and the reason for PTA fee, especially in big schools, should be used to build schools in the suburbs. This will bring more development, and many more children will have opportunity to learn in good structures. Mr. Leo, the PTA levy should stop. Let's see where teachers will steal, because you pay a fees including PTA. The head teachers put the stamps on the spot. He or she is written the money on the receipt. That is what happened to me when I pay my child's school fees. Van Fred is writing from Mutengen. Okay. If your message is not too good, I won't read them. There are so many, that's why I want to read them. Hello, good evening, sirs. In GBHS Mundemba, there are no teachers in high school section. Please say something. Mr. Peter is writing from Mundemba. Okay, good evening. I just want to say the program is great. Thank you. Good evening to you. Mr. Liu, please help us, the students. Our parents cannot continue with this. Free boy writing from Melon. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. My worries is about GTC in Col Volu in Yaoundé. We pay 41,000 francs every year and pay directly to school proprietor. And school fees is 10,000 francs, paying through Express Union. Is that right? I am the writing from Yaoundé. That's PTA is
50,000 in total.
Yes, school fees is 10,000.
PTA 40,000.
Okay.
They will hear from us.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. Is it normal for pupils and students to register every school year? That is a topic for another day. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Special greetings to Kmer. I think government schools should not collect PTA because government teachers, especially the principals, collect and enjoy himself and case go nowhere. So it should be parents to collect. Thanks. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Kum. I am a student of GBHS Messager. From the first day I went to school, they asked me for PTA fees. Meanwhile, we then have PTA teachers and we don't have. No, we are building on the government to help us with teachers. Thank you. I'm G. Flora. Okay, on Messager. Good evening once more, Leo. I had religious studies as one of my subjects in advanced level. Thanks to Fire Elvis, who was my classmate and teacher at GBHS Limbe 1999. Greetings to all GBHS ex-students association. Now, this is a case. We collect PTA levies in a school and there is no PTA teacher.
Yes, that's she said she's into somebody right.
The Flora
from Mr. J.
Yeah.
That's the same Mr. J. That doctor.
No, don't go personal. No, we are talking about schools.
Let me talk to you.
Yeah.
Dr. Fukalistus have been fighting so hard that children should go to school. But some individuals, because at times when they say the enemies of the state, they talk about the people who they think about the people who criticize. Some who are the critics of the government. They say we're the enemies of the nation. But the enemies of the nation are some of those people working in the government. Because this principal, who is asking for school for PTA in Misaje, the Northwest region, where the schools have not been going for the past 4 years, and Dr. Fukalistus, who is the minister, have been struggling the schools to go on in Misaje, and this individual is trying to sabotage his hard work. It will not work. So I feel that strict measures should be taken. Students and parents should denounce what they are doing. Yeah. If they should come even to us secretly. I think from now, Mr. Ta, I will join in that. Our
numbers will be very available.
I will join you in that.
They should give us the information.
They should give us the information. I think that if the mountain does not go to Mohammed we surely go to Yaoundé and let Konak nail some of these guys so that the others will fear. If not, why should there be money in coffers, in accounts for PTA? Meanwhile, there are no schools in the suburbs. If the monies that were collected in Douala for PTA from the past years, because we consider that money has been collected for the past years and the money has not all been used, so let the leftovers be transferred into the construction of other schools in the royal areas. If not, and then from there the PTA fee should stop in Douala and let those other areas where they have needs for PTA should collect. Yep. If it is that in Douala or in the urban centers in Bamenda, in Yaoundé, they should collect PTA fee, I will say no. How can they collect PTA fee in Kofulu for 40,000 and the fees is 10,000? What type of demonic human beings are these? I think that the government should stand up and deal with some of these guys.
Okay, greetings dear Leonard and my brothers in the studio. Great topic. I suggest that a moderate and an affordable amount be collected as PTA levy in government schools, and this amount should be agreed by parents, teachers, and school authorities. After the collection, same PTA should agree on how best to use the money to improve on any facility in the school. Principals should not have a domineering influence over the PTA, given that private schools are owned by individuals. There should be no collection of PTA. Rose Oba, writing from Bamenda, a colleague, should that be the way forward?
Yeah, I think those who sent messages that PTA should be collected from urban centers and channeled to rural areas, I think they have a point. But the problem here is the policy. Now the government need to institute policy, because you will not blame each school determine their policy for their PTA, because each school, the PTA is like kind of autonomous per school. A school defines their project. The PTA was open up for schools to define their project and defend their project per their niche. Now, if we have seen that there is this chaotic nature, the government now needs to come up with a policy, a state policy for PTA, and that state policy will mandate all institutions within the urban centers to collect PTA, and the funds are channeled to a government coffers, which is now used to redirect, or it may be channeled to maybe what if you have a PTA coffers manned by independent persons or parents, channel with high reputation to manage these funds, and they give account to the public and say that, okay, the total amount of funds that were collected in southwest region for schools within the urban area is about 77 million or 77 million. We have seen that in Nanga Eboko there is a need for this school to be developed. We have seen that in a school in Akwaya, in Gelemenduka. We have seen that a school in Bole Bakundu, there is this need. So we channel this fund out to Bole Bakundu. It should be a policy that this policy have both private and government schools. For the private school, would
that not defeat the purpose?
It will not defeat the purpose. It will solve the problem of individual asking that PTA levy for secondary schools, for urban centers, should be channeled to the rural areas. Because how can this be done? It can only be done through a policy. Remember that at this point in time, PTA is collected per individual, and each school has its niche. The problem of government bilingual high school Moya, where I come from, may be different from the problem of the state Bile Moliko. So the problem varies. But if we see that these schools are in urban center and they have not much need of development, they have a quota that they contribute to the national covers of PTA. Okay. That national covers of PTA have what we call a board that sits and redefine and redistribute this income.
Good evening, Mr. Leonard. I just want to say I love the program. Farouk Dula writing. The good evening. It's Bondodo writing from Nigeria. I would prefer that they stop PTA. This one says we register ourselves every year in our school. Is it normal, sir? Okay. Many persons are raising that issue of yearly registration. Yep. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I think they should collect, because we have come to discover most of the PTA teachers teach more than the so-called qualified teachers who just bought their entrance. Emmanuel is writing from Kumbu. Good evening to you, Mr. Kum. Exceptionally for this year, PTA fees were supposed to be either subsidized or suspended, considering the COVID-19 pandemic has crippled most economic activities. Ferdinand is writing from Douala. Mr. Liu, the only way for the regional and divisional delegates to get access to PTA funds is for them to sideline the PTA executive. Mr. Liu, ask the ministry where the PTA status are. It's hidden from the PTA executives. Ngu is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Leo. PTA should be collected in rural areas, because some teachers, when sent to rural areas, don't go but buy positions to stay in urban areas. Crispus is writing from Baraka in Menka. Good evening, sir. It's Ndale Innocent Awa from Bamenda. In some government schools, we pay 20,000 francs, while in others we pay 27,000 francs CFA. I don't know if we have to pay any school fees in government schools around all English areas. Okay, good evening, Mr. Leonard Amorfo Fabian writing from Boya. PTA fees are even more than the school fees. Okay, I enjoy you guys. You are got sent. Private schools ask exorbitant fees, so no PTA government, no PTA. Government schools in villages may collect PTA, but not town schools. Mr. Fai has mastered the system. Writing from Bangen, Uncle Prince. Okay, good evening to all. This question goes to Brother Far Elvis. Please, what do you think is the reason why we talk about injustice every day in all TV channels and nothing is changing? Mondi is writing from Limbe. Far Elvis, okay, the messages are just flowing in. What is the way forward since we are out of time?
Yes, the way forward is that, first, the powers that be in the education sector should do their job or they are fired. If you sit and somebody tells you that registration form in a school is 2,000 francs, I mean photocopy form, is 2,000 with a signature on it, times 100 of students, and you are staying quiet, you are accomplice to this crime. Therefore, we think that while the principals have become extraordinary persons in making moves at this time, the divisional delegate and the regional delegate should wash their hands off like Pontius Pilate. How can they do it? When they come in to put a stop on these practices and order those budgets to be refunded, because you must know under what parameter are we collecting PTA. Because all schools have their program. And sometimes you must find out the quorum. Was the quorum met? If they tell you that PTA decided last year that let us collect 19,500 francs and let us collect 15,000 francs, find out whether a quorum was attained or some individual sat somewhere and took decisions on behalf of the PTA who had more than 4,000 parents in that school. What are our parents? If you have, like now over there, we have more than 6,000 students now in churches Limbe. 6,000 students times 2, because averagely each child has a mother and a father who are always attending those meetings. So it means that we're talking about over 10,000 parents. So you must be able, as a divisional delegate or regional delegate, if this money is high, we hear Sodiko 30,000, what in Kofulu 40,000, and these things go cost free. It's because these monies are collected in complicity with the delegates in charge. If not, these delegates will give you an. First of all, if these delegates are not complices, principal will be afraid to take that move, because the moment your boss hears that you are involved in this kind of money, until you are issued receipt, because receipts are being issued in churches, or they have receipts for the PTA. So if receipts are being issued, it means that these receipts are backed by administrative authorities who have a say in those budgets. If they cannot do their job, Yaoundé should sit up and bring the regional delegates and the regional delegates plus the principals who collect illegal money to order. If they don't do that, it means that the parents themselves are in hell, because you see, as Javi said earlier, many of them have the worry and they cannot express. Yeah. So but they should take the bull by the horn.
Yeah, if you want the administrative authorities to sit up and ensure that they investigate and supervise
and regularize the collection, so it should not be exaggerated.
Yeah, but do you also think, like others, that the parents themselves have themselves to blame? Because we are talking about Parents Teachers Association fee. They are the ones that should decide what happens.
Yes, the parents have their own share of the blame, but they are helpless.
Yeah,
they are helpless, given that who will you complain to? They feel that because if in a subdivision, the subdivisional delegate for education, for secondary education, is not an accomplice, how come would the principal have that courage? Because when at times you go, you don't even meet the principal. Because I'm telling you, I will tell you what is going on in secondary schools, especially government schools in Douala, that before your child is enrolled into a school, before you pay the PTA, you pay about 100,000 francs. You buy admission for that child into that school. So if the delegates are not accomplice, we're not saying that they are accomplice, but if they say that they are not, we are suspecting. If they are not, they should wash off their hands and let the principals explain why they should collect money from these parents. Because you look at the
but these parents are the ones are paying. Are you saying that if all the parents were to gather themselves and move to a subdivisional delegate or the divisional delegate or regional delegate, that this is what all of us are going through, something would not change?
It will change. That's why we are going to create the awareness now. Because what we are doing, we are creating awareness. You know, there's fear. At time when school is reopening, as what we have this year, the government wants children to go to school. They're encouraging people to send children to school. Parents also are fighting. When you go to these schools, people queue for admission. You want it as much as possible. So following the desperate nature of this parents, the principals now take an advantage of this desperation to extort and impose money from the parents. So I think that time has come for this nonsense to stop. Mr. Fatayo, I think that we will put up this movement and then fight this fight for these parents, because we are also parents. We will create the movement, parents will join, and together we will conquer. PTA will come to an end.
I said the principal should keep the money, because they will refund the money. They will refund the money.
Has to refund.
There's no border.
Okay, sir, please, you guys should talk on this. Is it normal to register 20,000 every year and bring an A4 papers and the rest every single year? Okay, I'm sure we'll do a special program on that. Good evening to you all in the studio. My problem is not even the PTA, but the bribe of 100,000 francs they collect for registration. Please, I'm begging the government to do something about it. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I will not pay PTA levy in Bamenda for it to be used in a school where my kids are not in. Ngu is writing from Bamenda. Okay, that is the issue. Paying money to be used elsewhere. Good evening to you all in the studio. My problem is okay. George Abo writing there. Afu Stephen says some schools where are filling registration forms for 2,000 francs separate from the fees charged and other levies. Yep. Incredible. The Union of Parents and Teachers, OPTA, should reconvene and look into these issues and come up with a cut across solution. Afu Stevens is writing from Bamenda. Mr. Leo, if parents try to stage a match to the delegates' office, they will not be allowed. You know the system we are in. Okay, but we saw mothers in Boya. That was yesterday. Yeah. Who gathered themselves in Boya town because they did not have electricity. They went to the DO's office and they were listened to. Yes.
Mr. Leo, you understand that the context is different, because
especially when it has to do with education. The government, in the case of the Southwest and Northwest region, where government is trying to push children to school, and should the government find out that you, as a principal, that is supposed to facilitate registration, yes,
that's why we're saying that context is different. And instead, what people should be afraid of, they are not afraid of. What they should not be afraid of, they are afraid of. Like the issue of schools. This is a moment where they need to rally and team up, like what the women in Boya town did. Remember that Boya has been for a while, which is home to lots of offices and the commander-in-chief of the region, but without electricity. But education now at the center. We keep saying that education is the key to success, and we keep saying that education is a right of a child to go to school and to have education. That's why the government liberalized the educational system and stated that people should not pay fees. But now you see it's more rebranded. The no fee that the government has said it should not be collected, just registration money, has been rebranded back to PTA, in such a way that the PTA levy is 3 times higher than the fee. But parents need to come up and say enough is enough. We cannot, as parents, sit and continue. Or the government need to redefine how much a government school should collect, so that the parents can have a clear dichotomy. Because sometimes the parents are confused because there is no clear text to state that, okay, parents in government schools, you have to pay 2,500, as the case was in primary school. We're told that it's 2,500, but it's not the case. You move to primary schools now, you still see that 7,000, 10,000 for government primary school, which was supposed to be 2,500. But the parents reluctantly they pay this money. It is time good enough for them to stand up and say that this is the time the government is calling the sons and daughters of Northwest and Southwest to go to school. We cannot allow administrative authorities to use this favor or this green light of extorting money to deprive our kids from going to school. They need to step up.
Good evening. In GTC Limbe, the PTA is 20,000 francs, and admission form is 3,000 francs, and the total fee is 48,000 francs. Frank is writing from Limbe. Good evening. Lycée Moliko is 5,000 and above. PTA is 16,000 paid. 23,500 francs for my niece, which asked to pay 7,000 to Express Union lower seats, and my calculation 80,000 francs. And my friend was teaching computer for 40,000 francs from lycée. Okay, I think that is the PTA teacher who is paid 40,000 francs a month. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Can you imagine that a GHS Great Support collects 25,000 francs for PTA levy? It's exorbitant for poor parents. Rosemary from Great Support, thanks for the program. The figures are coming. Good evening. It's Bondodo writing from Nigeria. I would prefer they stop the PTA fees. Okay, Mr. Leo is Mambo Pena from Bojongo, Douala. I like the way you people in the panel handle the topic. You are the people God has sent to come and deliver the suffering population. I hope the government is watching this program, especially Madame Naloa. I think this will be the next protest to the streets. Extend my greetings to Uncle T, the kangaroo man. Good evening, Mr. Leo. This is Ndongo Sixtus from Kamer. Let that money be paid to PTA teachers. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I love your program. Your program always makes me come home by 6:55 p.m. I love following your program from the beginning. Amwam Jay-Z, writing from Limbe, Mbinde Street. Good evening to you, Amwam. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I like your program. I'm Christopher, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you all in the studio. Naftali from Boya. I think only government schools should be allowed to collect PTA fees, which can be used to create more schools and not the private schools because it's private business. Okay. I'm Epa, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, sir. I support the idea of no PTA. Mr. Leo, good evening. Principals of government schools here in Buda are collecting huge sums of money from IDPs from the Northwest and Southwest before admitting the children. Mr. Lanju Abdu is writing from Buda. Good evening to you. Good evening. Mr. Leo, once more, I wish to ask if PTA is stopped from schools and a building happened to collapse and it needs immediate construction, where would the funds come from? Colbert is writing from Bonaberry. Good evening, sir. PTA should not be collected in government schools because not all parents are able to pay, and especially orphan children. Nikobo Immaculate, writing from Kumba. This one says private institutions should instead be the ones to collect PTA, not government schools, of which they still turn out to receive good salaries. I'm Adrian Nima, writing from Kumba. Nope, messages can't take all. We have to end here. Thank you for coming.
It's always a pleasure, and I think that Madame Naloba Leonga, because I believe so much in her, she will do something to see to it that these malpractices come to an end. Because in Cameroon, if they are coming out with a law, I think the law should be made clear. It's the same as the law of temporal occupation of the public domain, that these guys used to extort money. They give, some mayors even take it and give the contract to individuals who used to extort money from the taxpayers. I think that there are so many things to be addressed by the government, so the authorities in place should take note.
Thank you also for coming for Elvis Tayong.
It is my pleasure. The crusade to investigate illegalities in schools continue. We shall be in the West region. We shall be in Buda. We shall be in Nun. We shall continue the wrap-up in Fako. We shall be in Meme. We shall get to the principals and Senegal Maritime in a day. We shall get the things. The right things must be done, whether they like it or not.
Thank you for coming, Tamai Jarvis.
Thanks, Leonard. Special good evening to all those who took our time to send text messages, even to those who criticize us. I must say that we are here to educate Cameroonians from a balanced position and without being partisan and political. Good evening to the peace-loving people of Moya. Good evening to my sister, Auntie Emma, and of course Helen, and of course good evening to the President of the Republic.
Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for watching the program, and to the production team, Eli and his team, good evening to everyone. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.